This week on Art on the Air features singer-songwriter Bonnie Koloc, a fixture in the Chicago music scene since 1968, featured for a decade at the Earl of Old Town, appearing one night only at the Old Town School of Music on February 3rd. Our spotlights on the 2024 For the Love of Art Fair at South Bend Century Center on February 17th and 18th with Shireen Cline.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart.
Welcome. You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, WVLP 103.1 FM, our weekly program covering the arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. I'm Larry Breckner of New Perspectives Photography, right alongside here with Esther Golden of The Nest in Michigan City.
Aloha, everyone.
We're your hosts for Art on the Air. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project Grant, South Shore Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Art on the Air is heard every Sunday at 7 p.m. on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, also streaming live at lakeshorepublicmedia.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Media's website as a podcast. Also heard on Friday at 11 a.m. and Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP 103.1 FM, streaming live at WVLP.org, and Tuesdays at 4 p.m. on WDSO 88.3 FM. Our spotlight interviews are also heard Wednesdays on Lakeshore Public Media. Information about Art on the Air is available at our website, breck.com/AOTA. That includes a complete show archive, spotlight interviews, plus our show is available on multiple podcast platforms, including NPR One. Please like us on Facebook, Art on the Air, WVLP, for information about upcoming shows and interviews. And we'd like to welcome back to Art on the Air Spotlight. She's been with us several times before, but we're coming back for the 2024 For the Love of Art Fair. She's the founder and the whole entrepreneur of the event in South Bend at the Century Center. Shireen Cline, welcome back to Art on the Air Spotlight.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so nice to see you.
I love seeing Esther with her beautiful glasses.
Well, this is your 10th anniversary, so it's pretty exciting. And, of course, if any one of our listeners has been listening to Art on the Air, we've had, I think almost 6 guests on that are going. Actually, looking back over the years, we've had several people that are also going to be there in our show, but it sounds exciting. So tell us some of the things that are coming up for the 10th anniversary of the For the Love of Art Fair.
Well, we have many of our returning artists joining us from Kentucky and Michigan, Chicago, and so forth. But we have a lot of new artists, young artists, like a whole new emerging group of artists I'm excited about. So that's exciting to have some fresh faces and some fresh art and energy at the show this year.
So tell us about some of the artists that we'll see. You know, we've obviously interviewed them, but what varieties of art you have on display there, and you tell us about what you can expect over the 2 days that you're going to have it in February.
Well, you can always expect beautiful things for your wall to decorate your home, and then we also have wearable art like hats and we have some silk artist that paints on silk, so there's scarves. We have a weaver that has this beautiful integrated beautiful colors of weaving pieces that you can wear. And we have sculptures, lots of sculptures. In fact, from the beginning, I always was inspired by SOFA and Art Expo, which is full of sculptures. And this year, we have probably more sculptors than we've ever had before.
And I think in the past, you've featured like an artist. Do you have that again this year?
Yes, we always feature a local artist. And this year, our honorary artist is Susan Ward. And so
what type of work does she do?
She does found objects. She creates kind of like a collection of found objects, and how can I explain? She has it's on her interview. Anyways, she has like found objects, and she integrates them into wood and metal pieces and so forth. She just takes discarded objects and puts them together to create sculptures.
Yeah.
And we had her on our
We
interview.
did.
It was January 19th. So if people want to, they can listen to that interview with her on Lakeshore. I was always curious, what was the inspiration for you to do this, to take this huge task on 10 years ago? I said, well, why do we need an art fair indoors?
Well, I was inspired by, again, Art Expo and SOFA, attending that show and thinking to myself, I can do this too, but at a smaller scale, and allowing the artists to have an affordable art fair where they can display their work and sell their work and not be able to, they pay for their booth space and they don't have to pay a commission to me. So they keep 100% of their sales.
Wow, that's a great, because most of those don't work that way. So, and how is it to work with the South Bend Century Center? I mean, that's been your venue. Has that been the venue for all 10 years?
No, our stepping stone was another venue in Elkhart, Indiana, and then we moved on to the South Bend Century Center because it's in the heart of downtown, and it just works better for us. And we also work with all those great restaurants and stuff in the downtown area for in-kind sponsors. So we have all these door prizes that we give out, and those would be like $25 gift certificates to different restaurants in the area. So the people that come through our door, there's an admission of $10, but they may be leaving with a $25 gift certificate to go out to eat, or even up to a $300 gift certificate. We have some packages that are up to $300 that are door prizes.
Wow. So what kind of attendance do you have?
Definitely people that appreciate the art. They're looking for things to purchase, but we also have a lot of people that just are curious. So therefore, I have the artist put together in their booth things that are affordable for the curious people that have never been to an art fair, and then things that are more for the collectors that are looking for something to decorate their home. And I always encourage them to put a masterpiece in the center to let people know that they have other things available, maybe at a more expensive level. But our stuff is always affordable at this show.
So, Shireen, with your featured artist, how is that designated within the group of artists? Are they off on their own? Is there...
when you
so how will somebody know that that's a featured artist?
Oh, when you come in, they're right there at the door. That's how yep. They're the first ones that you're going to see, the first person that you see. And so I offer them a 10 by 20 space, and they get to, create their gallery space. But, I also have two memorials this year, of course, Brabant Lenting. So Leo will be in to display his work. And I have another one. His name is Scott Hatt. And he passed away a few years ago, and I was really inspired by his work. So I asked the trustees of his work to display his work at the show.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Well, we only have about a minute left, so we want to give you a chance to tell people about your website, how to get there, and also accommodations that you have if you're coming from out of town.
Everything is on our website, fortheloveofartfair.com. If you're coming in from out of town, we have a special link with the DoubleTree that there's a special rate that I'm offering to our guests and all of our artists, and it is February 17th and 18th at the South Bend Century Center.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, and there's also great music, and we featured some of that. One of those artists on there that tells Saturday, February 17th, 10 to 5, Sunday, February 18th, 11 to 4, South Bend Century Center for the Love of Art Fair. Shireen Cline, thank you so much for coming on Art in the Air Spotlight.
Happy 10th, Shireen. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me. You have a wonderful, happy New Year.
Yeah, you as well.
Art on the Air Spotlight and the complete one-hour program on Lakeshore Public Media is brought to you by McCauley Real Estate in Valparaiso, Olga Patrician, Senior Broker. And as a reminder, if you'd like to have your event on Art on the Air Spotlight or have a longer feature interview, email us at aota@brech.com. That's aota@brech.com. You're listening to Art on the Air with our guest today, singer-songwriter Bonnie Koloc, on Lakeshore Public Media 89.1 FM and on WVLP 103.1 FM.
Ah, sweet temptation, full of laughter, so many bodies I could not move, but you found me in the darkness and took me slow dancing to the blues. And if you ask me when I need comfort, what would it be in this world I would choose? Your loving arms and your warm body to take me slow dancing to the blues. Wrap me up, oh, put your arms around me, turn it down, breathe with me when I move. Can't you tell how much I need it to go slow dancing to the blues?
We are honored to welcome Bonnie Koloc to Art on the Air. Bonnie is a multifaceted wonder in music, fine arts, and theater, garnering acclaim as well as awards in all those disciplines. Her career has brought her into many exciting and long-lasting collaborations. Her talents are ever-growing and inspiring. I adore and admire this abundantly talented, beautiful woman. Thank you for joining us on Art on the Air. Aloha and welcome, Bonnie. It's so good to see
aloha. Well, thank you. Thank you. Nice to be here with Larry also.
Well, thank you. And unfortunately, we missed our last interview. The last time we saw you is when we were interviewing your husband about his book. But now is your chance to tell us your life story. I always like to say how you got from where you were to where you're now. So tell us all about Bonnie.
Well, soon that's going to be 80 years worth. That's a long time. I'll shorten it. Well, I was born in Waterloo, Iowa. My dad worked in the factory. I had a brother, Jim, and my mom, and they loved music. They listened to like the radio all the time, and they used to have music on. They had the LPs and the old records, and I grew up listening to Bing Crosby. That'll date me. And, you know, they loved country music. And at that time, it was more traditional country. So I grew up with that in my immediate family. But my aunts and uncles were really into, my dad's family were Czech from Prague. A lot of my uncles were born there. My dad was youngest, so he was born here. But they loved classical music. And so I was exposed to that at a young age, and also in Catholic school. We had music appreciation. I remember when the nun came in, put on a record and played Peter and the Wolf. And I wish that they still did stuff like that in schools so that children would be, would hear more, a variety of music. Music has been the huge thing in my life. I sang whole songs when I was 3 years old, and I always sang a cappella, so it really developed my ear. I had a hard time deciding if I wanted to be a singer, a visual artist, or an actress. And I really wanted to do all of them because I thought, if you work really hard, you could do them.
And they're complementary.
Yeah, they are. And having done a lot of different things, I see how the arts are so interconnected. I mean, you can dance a line, you can sing a line, you can draw a line, and it transfers in the fact that, like, if you sing a line, if you think of an ink line drawn with a brush, you have different tones in your singing voice. So a dark, heavy stroke would be ah, and then a thinner one would be so it's still a line. It's just using a different way of thinking. And so I really trained my ear. And so I have sort of a photographic memory for sound. So when I learn, I can read somewhat, but not really. I don't learn things from reading music. I learn it from listening. And so if I'm going to learn a new song, I will not sing along with the piano, but I'll listen to the piano and then I hear it back in my head and then I sing it. So I hear pitch in my head. And I think that comes from probably a natural ability, but then also being exposed to that kind of thing from a really young age. I went to Catholic school from graduated from first grade to graduation. Then the only way I could go to school that I had the money to go would be at State College of Iowa at that time, which was in Cedar Falls. And I started out as a drama major because I was very active in drama in high school. And I really wasn't singing. I didn't sing like in the head tones, like that kind of thing. I learned to sing from Bing Crosby, who they used to call a crooner. And they really sing just like you're talking. It's just real natural. I always say if anybody can really sing if they can carry pitch. But like when he did, would you like to swing on a star? That's so natural and easy. And I've sort of developed a way of placing things so that I can interpret and sing the way I want to. The horn has really affected me in the fact that I will take the vibrato out and I think of air going through a tube, like and so that's a chest voice, but really it's just like speaking. And in singing, you have so many colors and so many emotional things that you can use as colors. You can use rhythm, you can use silence, you can use loud, you can use soft, you can use thin, you can use fat. And opera singers do this a lot. And they use much more of their head tones, and they'll practice a year to be able to sing over the orchestra. So I started out a drama major, and then I switched to an art major, and that's actually, I didn't finish. I went off and on to school for 6 years, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be an artist of some kind. So then I sang with the jazz band in the music department, but they took me on tour with them. But I was singing in clubs, doing traditional folk music and making money at that. And when I was like 21, that's when I started doing that. And then I finished with an art degree. And that's my degree is in art education. I could teach, but I never really wanted to teach. But I wanted a degree because no one in my family, immediate family, had even really finished high school. So that was just important to me to do. Let's see, I skipped quite a ways ahead. And then, should I stop and let?
No, you're doing fine. We love to hear the story.
I know.
Okay. And then I was making money singing. I got a guitar, and friends of mine who I was taking lessons from, a friend said, Bonnie, you ought to be playing. And they were playing at a little Bob Waller, actually, who wrote Bridges of Madison County later. Bob and my friend Scott Kowalty were a duo, and they were playing. And they got me to go down to this little place, and I got a job for the summer. And I was just starting to play guitar, and I said to Scott, gee, Scott, he said, you ought to be playing, like getting a gig. And I said, but I don't know very many songs. And he said, just, or the guitar. He said, just sing, play with your elbow. It doesn't matter. Just sing. So that's what I did. And
you were a major part in the 60s into the 70s of the scene down there, or I guess you might call it the folk scene, or that kind of thing, like an Old Town area and thereabouts. So tell us a little bit about those experiences.
Okay, so I was going to school and I was really depressed and I didn't know what I wanted to do and I kept failing in and out of school. So my friend Gib, who moved to Chicago, he was from Cedar Falls, and he said, Koloc, come on in here. You need to come into Chicago. So Chicago, being from the Midwest, was like the big city you could go to. I knew someone there, and when I came to Chicago, I immediately felt I had arrived home. But the folk boom, the one where you had was earlier, like the radio play and everything. When I arrived in town, really, the women that were singing were with groups. It was Spanky and Our Gang. It was Mama and the Papas with Mama Cass. The single woman singing folk songs was really kind of passé at that time. But that's what I was doing. And so I was just had gotten into town and I was cleaning house for Gib, and he'd let me sleep on the floor and in his little coach house, which was in Old Town. So we were walking down the street on Wells Street, and we came to where the Old Quiet Night was, which was at the south end of Wells Street. And there was the door, and we went in, and there was no one really in there. And the guy's name was Brown. That was his last name. I remember he had on a big striped T-shirt. And he was there, and I said, Gib, will you ask him if I can get up? And he said, you want the job, you ask him. So I said to him, could I try out? I'm a singer. And he said, from where? I said, Iowa. Well, I said, could I audition? And he said, sure, here's a little guitar. So I got up and I sang. And then he said, well, just stay here a minute. And he called Richard Harding, and Richard was the owner. And he said, I want the owner to hear you. So he came down, and Richard hired me for $60 a week. And so I started singing there. I sang there all summer. And Gib lost his job at Marshall Fields because he wouldn't shave his beard. And so he needed a job. So he became the bartender there for a while. So in the fall, I had heard that Earl wanted me to come up there, and I wanted to get an accompanist because I really wanted to stretch out and sing much more. And I'm so lazy; I hated to practice guitar, and so I found a guitarist. And in the meantime, I went and I played at a place called the Oats, where you'd go on and sing, and all these lights would come on and off like for go-go dancers. And the Chicago cops used to come in there and sit around too. Anyway, I went up and I auditioned for Earl. And I remember Freddie Holstein laughing all the way down the steps. He said, you're going to work at the Earl. Oh, that's such a noisy place and everything. Well, I bantered around with Earl because I didn't want to get into something like if I said I'd play there 6 months and I hated it. So I said, no, how about just two weeks? So he said, yeah, 2 weeks with a 2-week option. So I started at the
Always
Earl.
negotiating.
Yes, that's right. It was like a chess game between he and I. And I was 23. I was 23 years old. And it just went really well from the get-go. And, I had worked 5 years, at Ramada Inns and Holiday Inns, the bars, playing before I got to Chicago. And I really learned how to deal with an audience because they didn't shush anybody like folk clubs did. I had to earn that audiences to hear me. And I even had one gig where when I was off, go-go dancers went on. And then I came back on and did folk music. So that's crazy. So it really went well at the Earl, and that became sort of my family. And there were wonderful players there. And it just, I don't know, I just started to get really nice audiences. And then I met that first week. I met Stevie Goodman, who was only 19 years old. And Steve Goodman, who an incredible writer and performer, and
So did you meet him because he came to hear your set?
No, I met him through Guy Gilbert, who was a bass player who was sort of connected to the Old Town School. In fact, Guy took me down to the Old Town School when it was on North Avenue.
Right.
And Win Strachey, he was one of the people that started it. And that was wonderful. And partly the folk scene did not die out because of the Old Town School. That wasn't a passing thing of only doing what's popular. After the popularity sort of waned, the Old Town School was still there because they felt that folk music was a viable music for anyone. You could go and take guitar lessons, and you could play English ballads or play old American folk songs. And so really folk music in Chicago really sustained, partly hugely because of the Old Town School.
Right. And Orphans. I mean, Orphans continued with folk until the 80s, even along with the Earl.
Right.
You know.
Right. And yes, and there were like half a dozen really strong folk clubs. And then of course you had the blues. You could not but be, unless you were dead, you couldn't be not inspired by the great blues players. I met Willie Dixon later. Willie was this incredibly wonderful songwriter. He had worked at Chess Records, and I got to like meet them. And he gave me later when I was going to record. He gave me, like, I still have it, a cassette of songs for Bonnie Koloc. and Willie was such a darling. Oh, he was an incredible human being and great man.
It was really nice that the 70s and 80s, everybody was so accessible. I mean, Sunny Lane Slim was just like so lovely, It's just, and very accessible. So, and all those places were in such close proximity to each other, to the blues clubs and the folk clubs. So
that's right. They were in that area from Wells Street down Lincoln Avenue. You could hit, if you wanted to go out, you could hit a blues club and you could go to a folk club. And it was an amazing boiling pot of music. And even
that's a perfect description.
Really, it was, because lots of people were influenced by a lot of different things. And it was a time when it actually in the music business too, like you had Dylan, you had someone who then went into, he brought in, he was acoustic, but then brought in electric, and we waited for the Beatles albums. We waited. They would say, "Oh, there's a White Album coming, and it's just fantastic," and you'd wait to get it. And it was such an emergence, and it was an emergence with social justice too, and peace and war, and people were standing up for what they believed, and it was all mixed in with all that. And then you had Phil Oakes, who wrote those great protest songs. In fact, I opened at the Old Quiet Night. I opened for Jim and Jean, and they did a lot of Phil Oakes material, and he wrote incredible protest songs. And I was there when they were having all of the craziness of the convention, and I was right down in the middle of all of it, because we saw the police and the big buses and squad cars. I was working at the would have been the summer of 68 or 9. When was the convention? Do you know? Was it 68 or
68?
68. I was in the middle of all of that. And I was working it was my first summer in Chicago, and I was working at the Old Quiet Night, which people were running down the street, and Richard shut the door. He had a big dog named Duke, and he always kept a gun behind the bar, and he had a big chunk of keys hanging on his pants in the back. And if something was going on, he'd say, "Duke," and the dog would come running out from behind the bar, and he would grab his gun. And they shut the door and locked it, and you could see people running, and I could see police cars across in the schoolyard with their lights on, chasing people, and then stopping, had the door, the guy jumped out, had the door open, and he's like beating on this guy with a billy club. And so we sat in there for quite some time until it died down. It was an incredible time. And I just happened to wander into it that spring.
So, Bonnie, when did you start writing songs? When did that come in? And especially because I know you had mentioned that New York City Blues was a song that you wrote quite a long time ago, and we'd like to listen to that soon. But could you talk to us about songwriting?
Right. I started writing songs when I was in college before I came to Chicago. And I wrote, actually, Rainy Day Lady was one of my first songs because I was so depressed. And it went, a lonely woman on a rainy afternoon sings her song softly to her shadowed room, wakes up early, sleeps way past noon. What's bothering you, you rainy day lady? Look in the mirror on your wall. Do you have a number that you can call? Do you, I can't remember the rest of it, but you rainy day lady. So that was before I came. And then I wrote, when I got there in 1968, in the fall, I met somebody who said, oh yeah, come to New York and we'll record. I said, oh boy, okay. So I went and I stayed with a family. Actually, it was a priest and his wife, Episcopalian priest, Ian Mitchell, and he had written the first mass for folk mass. And they were real sweethearts. And so they lived in White Plains, New York, and they said, Bonnie, you can stay with us. And when I went to New York, Stevie Goodman had just found out he had cancer, and he almost died from it. And I would take my guitar and go up and see Steve at the Sloan Kettering Hospital. And anyway, I wrote New York City Blues when I was staying at their house, and I helped pay my way by babysitting for their children.
Such a great experience in that whole area. I remember hitting Ratzos and Orphans, but I was more jazz oriented.
Right. Well, jazz was more down on Rush Street.
Right.
And they had at that time, you had all of this bigotry or prejudice get between the music. So classical looked down on jazz and folk, and jazz looked down on folk.
Everybody looked down on folk.
Everybody looked down on folk. You weren't really a musician. You couldn't be a very good musician if you were a folk musician. And and so, but then later, the horn player from the Chicago Symphony, great French horn player, can't think of his name right now. Oh man. Anyway, he would come in down to jazz at noon, and that was a little later, though. I went down, and then I got to sit in with the jazz players. And actually, people became less prejudiced over time. And now, it's a common thing. Like Yo-Yo Ma will play with a guy from, like people from Nashville and stuff. But it was players that made that change. And, it was really funny because everybody looked down on folk music.
So true.
Yeah.
Well, we want to hear some of your work, and I think New York City Blues with our guest today, Bonnie Koloc.
An empty bed in an empty room. Oh, the light, it is too bright, and the night's too soon. You're hurting so bad, but you can't find the wound, and you got nobody to Chicago again. Gonna stay a while, and I will try to mend. But like a fool, I will leave again. Gotta find somebody to know how I feel. You got nobody, can't find nobody. You got nobody to know how you feel.
And that was New York City Blues with our guest today, Bonnie Koloc, on Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, and on WVLP, 103.1 FM.
Yeah, so amazing to hear the story and then hear the song. And so,
Yes, when I get $1 and go to Chicago again, just like a fool, I'll leave again. But Chicago will always be home to me because it took me in. Yes, it will always be home. Okay, so after you ask, go ahead, Esther.
no, I was just going to say, how does, do you write songs prolifically or
No, no. I'll tell you, when I went to New York later, when I went to New York in the 80s, I was so alone that I would sit in front of the TV and I would write. And I wrote a whole album that summer, and they were some of my best things. And once the door opens, it's one part of your brain that works. And then once that closes, when you stop doing that, then it really closes for me. And it's so funny because some songs I just written like, zoom, zoom. And other times I have bits and pieces for years. I just did a thing in Nashville and talked to John Prine's family and Fiona, his wife. And John, she said hadn't recorded in 13 years. And they said, John, you have to write more songs. So he would keep bits and pieces. And that's what you do. It's like
is it kind of catalyst driven though? Because it seems like so much, like you talked about Rainy Day Woman was from your depression, and you wrote 2 beautiful songs about your brother. So it seems like beautiful songs about your brother.
My songs tend to be right from my life, and or crumbs in the butter after I got married. And I had a friend actually who said the one thing that when she was married that crumbs in the butter. She says it's going to sound funny, but that drove me crazy. And so I kept that for years and years, and then much, much later wrote the song Crumbs in the Butter. And so, they're very tied with my life. I had a wonderful older brother who was a guitar player and always in and out of trouble and did not survive our childhood. I don't know. I think if I wrote every day, then more would come, But I haven't even counted how many I've written, and I don't even know if I have them all written down anywhere.
So you start out kind of solo, and how did the development of this wonderful band that how did that come about? How did you meet all of these people?
Well, at first I signed with a small record company, which it was a crazy time, and I hardly ever talk about it. And I was involved with people who really wanted me to be the singer to a rock and roll band, and I went along with it for a while. But then I finally had a hit single in 1973, and they didn't have it in the stores, so it fell off the charts. And that was a huge disappointment because if you have a hit single and people just don't forget it, and so you can draw, like you can go and play in New York City, or you can play in Tennessee or Des Moines or something, and people are going to come because they know they are familiar with you. Well, this fell off the charts, and that was really, really a disappointment. And I didn't record for a while, and all my records never sold very much. So, it's so different than now. You can be up there and have people see you.
I know it's so ephemeral almost. You catch the wave. I mean, it sounds like you caught the wave and then a lot of things fell off because not everybody connected the dots in promoting you.
Oh, it was really hard when they told me to go to. I was playing I was playing out in the Troubadour out in California, and they told me to call these people and thank them. They had a lot to do with disc jockeys, and it was a turntable hit across the country. It was called "You're Gonna Love Yourself in the Morning." It was a song written by Donnie Fritz, who was Christofferson's piano player, and but it wasn't in the stores. And the producer called me and said, "Bonnie, if they don't get it in the stores, it's going to fall off the charts." And Anne Murray's thinking of covering it, and someone else was thinking of covering it. And then I had it on the back side. I also had Jim Croce's "I Can Only Say I Love You" in a song. And then his wife put that out, and that was a big hit. I played Ravinia with Jim Croce, and I was supposed to go out on the road with him on tour, and he went down on the airplane.
I know, just so tragic.
Yeah, it was. And Morgan Tell was with him. He was from Chicago, and his first act was with him too. And so, anyway, but it was sad because he was truly talented and a real sweetheart. Yep. But then in the 80s, I went to New York. I had decided I wanted to see if I was good enough to pitch in the major leagues. But I had played there before and gotten good reviews. But I decided I should move there. And I was tired of all the cold and snow in Chicago, digging my car out when it was buried with snow. So in the 80s, I saved up money from working at the Earl. And I went off to New York. I had an illegal sublet and had to take a dog in and out. So they finally found out I was there. And Sandy Dennis, the actress, was a good friend of mine, and she got me to try out for some things with Joe Papp at the Public Theater. And I landed a part in a show that Galt McDermott, who had written Hair, did. And I was there. I hadn't acted since I was in high school or college, but I don't know. I seemed to fall back into it. And Wilfred Leach, who was a wonderful director with Joe, Will had directed Pirates of Penzance. And anyway, I got good reviews and I won some awards. And but I decided I was 44 years. I turned 40. I always said I'd kill myself when I was 40, but instead I went to Broadway. And
some awards. The Bronze Award for Outstanding New Talent on Broadway. That's a big award.
And Joe was wonderful. I loved Joe Papp. He was so good to me. And he wanted me to come out and try for other things and stuff. But then, like the plague for gay people, I can't think of it right now, came in. Yeah, HIV came in and it sort of wiped out. I mean, Will died of it. It was horrible. And a lot in the cast, when I was leaving, a lot of people died from that. It was terrible. But I have a wonderful story. They wanted Betty Buckley originally, who was a wonderful Broadway actress, and for the part. And they didn't call me back right away. They did a read through with Betty, and they called me back. And I went up, and I had not met Joe. I was Joe and Wilfred and Galt were sitting in these folding chairs in this little room, and Joe had not heard me. Now Galt and Will did, but This was like a couple months after I had auditioned. So I was kind of nervous because anytime I don't want something, I'm great. When I want something, I fall apart. And I did the thing, and then I was leaving, and they said thank you, and I was just getting into the elevator, and the one of the guys came running out, and not Joe but someone else, the casting director, and said, Bonnie, they'll let you know. I said, oh, thank you. I don't think I did very well. And they said, no, it's okay. And he came running back and grabbed the elevator door and said, no, they want you to come back in. So I went back in, and I stood there, and Joe stood up, and he bowed, and he handed me the libretto, big thick thing, and he said and he bowed, and he said, it's yours. Oh. And I said, Mr. Papp, I'll work really hard. I'll be as excellent as I can be. And then I left, and I didn't have anybody to tell. Because I was in New York alone. I was sleeping on the floor with the dog, living on $10 a day. And I'm 39 years old. And I called my mother in Iowa, and I said, Mama, this is a big deal. I just got in this show with Joseph Papp. This is like a really big deal. And she's going, yeah. And then I didn't have anybody to celebrate with. But anyway, it was a wonderful thing. And theater people, it's when you get in a show, it was a huge cast. Mary Elizabeth Mastrotonio, who's from Chicago. Beautiful, great, beautiful voice, lovely person. And we ran, I think it was 13 weeks at the Public, and I got wonderful reviews. And Joe, in fact, when I got back from first night that we did it, he called me and left a message on my machine and said, Bonnie, this is Joseph Papp, and I want to read you the reviews. So it was a wonderful experience. And after that, I just thought, I want a home. I hadn't had a home. I went everywhere alone. I ate alone. I was such a loner. And that's when I came back to Chicago. And I finished my degree in art. I decided I wanted that. I wanted to know that I could do that. And I did that. And I'd always worked somewhat in visual art. I'd do a painting a year. And
a magnificent painting.
Oh, I don't think I'm that great a painter.
Oh, no, you're a very good painter.
Well, I always thought that if I would have spent the time on my visual art instead of all the time I put on my singing, that maybe I would have been a better visual artist. But I just sort of do things that I do it because I have to. That's who I am. I like to set up a problem and solve it. And that's what you do, and to express something. And
you're listening to Art on the Air with our guest today, singer-songwriter Bonnie Koloc, on Lakeshore Public Media 89.1 FM and on WVLP 103.1 FM.
I have a question about, because we want to listen to the snake. Now, is that your Indiana connection?
No. But I was very connected to Indiana. Through my friend Kurt Burkhardt. Yeah, well, I had a little house on the Tippecanoe. Kurt Burkhardt, who died, who was my bud for 3 years, was from Rochester, Indiana. And so for a while I had a house on the Tippecanoe. But no, this was after I married. I married in 88 after I came back. And we bought an old house a couple of years later in Iowa. And in northeast Iowa, it is not flat. It's up near the Mississippi River. And there was a rattlesnake in our backyard. And the dog found it. And I went out and I couldn't understand what was this loud noise. It sounded like a little engine. And it turned out to be about a 4-foot rattler and the dog had found him, but he wasn't that close. But so I wrote the poem and then I set it to music and later recorded it.
How fun.
Well, Bonnie, we're just about out of time, so we're going to play that song, The Snake, but we want to give you a quick chance to tell us what you got coming up at Old Town School of Music on Saturday, February 3rd, and also how people can find you online.
They can find me online by, BonnieKoloc.com, and I do have CDs available People don't buy CDs anymore, but I do have them. And I'm doing an 80th birthday party concert at the Old Town School of Folk Music, February 3rd. My birthday's the 6th. And I lied many years ago to the Chicago Tribune and told them I was 2 years younger than I am. Someone said to me, "Are you sure? Are you sure you're going to be 80?" I said, "Yeah, I think so." But I feel really good, and I'm still singing okay, and I'm so excited about doing this. So,
well, Bonnie, we appreciate you coming on Art in the Air. That's Bonnie Koloc. She'll be Saturday, February 3rd at the Old Town School of Music, and now we're going to be listening to The Snake. Thank you so much for coming on Art on the Air.
Thank you, my dear friend.
Thank you, Esther. You darlings. Okay, bye-bye.
Dog has gone crazy. There's a snake in the yard, hiding in the flowers, and he's rattling hard. The cats are all curious. They just sit there and stare, wanting to get closer, but wondering if they dare. Is it an omen? Is it a sign? Does it know the future while the rest of us are blind? Run for the camera, ooh, run for the broom, run for the garden hoe to secure its doom. Do we have to kill it? There's nothing to forgive. Can't we just let it slip away, let the terrible thing live? Is it an omen? Is it a sign? Does it know the future while the rest of us are blind? Sorry that I killed it. I'm sorry that it's dead. I'm sorry that I kept its tail and chopped off its head. 7 little rattles for 7 long years, both terrible and beautiful. I'm sorry for my fears. Is it an omen? Is it a sign? Does it know the future while the rest of us are blind? Is it an omen? Is it a sign? Does it know the future while the rest of us are blind?
We'd like to thank our guest this week on Art on the Air, our weekly program covering the arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. Art on the Air is heard Sunday at 7 p.m. on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, also streaming live at lakeshorepublicmedia.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Media's website as a podcast. Art on the Air is also heard Friday at 11 a.m. and Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP 103.1 FM, streaming live at WVLP.org. Our Spotlight interviews are heard every Wednesday on Lakeshore Public Media. Thanks to Tom Maloney, Vice President of Radio Operation for Lakeshore Public Media, and Greg Kovach, WVLP's station manager. Our theme music is by Billy Foster with a vocal by Renee Foster. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project Grant, South Shore Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts. We'd like to thank our current underwriters for Lakeshore Public Media, Macaulay Real Estate in Valparaiso, Olga Patrician, Senior Broker. And for WVLP, Walt Breidinger of Paragon Investments. So we may continue to bring you Art in the Air. We rely on you, our listeners and underwriters, for ongoing financial support. If you're looking to support Art on the Air, we have information on our website at breck.com/AOTA, where you can find out how to become a supporter or underwriter of our program in whatever amount you are able. And like I say every week, don't give till it hurts. Give till it feels good. You'll feel so good about supporting Art on the Air. If you're interested in being a guest or send us information about your arts-related event or exhibit, please email us at aota@breck.com. That's aota@breck.com, or contact us through our Facebook page. Your hosts were Larry Breckner and Esther Golden, and we invite you back next week for another episode of Art on the Air.
Aloha, everyone. Have a splendid week.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the Air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the Air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world